I do think the Twins have an interesting system 1 through 6, and there's some depth guys that could easily match some of those depth guys that the White Sox got from the Dodgers.
Yeah, that was my point, is that I think they got fleeced. There was interest, but I think they botched that one big time. Dan Hayes covering the Minnesota Twins for The Athletic. Give him a follow at Dan Hayes MLB. It's probably the simplest question to start an interview that I've ever done. Dan, good to see you. For the Minnesota Twins, what happened at the trade deadline?
Nothing. I mean, I've had some really interesting trade deadlines I've covered. I was there the day the Padres couldn't wake up Jake Peavy in 2009 and traded him to the White Sox. Tried to get him on the phone for like 90 minutes. I was there the day that Ubaldo Jimenez was going to be traded to Cleveland, and the Rockies sent him out to the mound to warm up for a start, to get some leverage. Some crazy days, and this one was really quiet. I mean, look, Trevor Richards is a good addition to a bullpen. And in the context of, I don't know how many players were out there that would have totally improved the Twins. Like this was kind of a lackluster trade deadline in that regard, but they needed a starter, and they weren't able to get one. They've needed a starter since the start of the season. And so it was definitely a disappointing day for Twins fans. And I don't think that I found a lot of indifference in the clubhouse as far as player reaction, but guys get a boost from a player being added, regardless who it is. And they were hoping for that. And they see Cleveland and Kansas City make some ads, even though those, I think Cleveland's ads were Lane Thomas, I really like for that club. And with Alex Cobb, if that works out, that could be great because they needed starting pitching. That was very creative in my opinion. But it's not like those teams went out and made significant, drastic improvements. So, but you still want that boost. And I think some guys were a little bit disappointed by that.
Was there ever a chance there was going to be a move? Was there ever hope in Minnesota that there could have been a move?
Yeah, there was.
Or based on last year, no. There was? Okay.
Yeah, no, there was. Look, they were in on Yusei Kikuchi, and then Houston went and gave 3 guys that are basically major league ready. And look, congratulations to Houston. That's they are clearly feeling it and needing to add him. That rotation's been in a tough spot most of the year. I think the Twins really liked him, even though the ERA isn't great and the recent struggles are not encouraging for Kikuchi. The underlying numbers suggest there's improvement. The Twins are really good at getting the most out of their guys. And I think that's one of maybe pitchers they thought could step into the rotation and possibly crack the top 3 in the rotation for a playoff series. Flaherty's another guy, although obviously we saw with the medicals that other teams had concerns. But Kikuchi, they felt like they were in advanced talks with, and then Houston just blew them away. And look, what that would have cost the Twins. Houston is a team that has more means to spend on free agency. We've seen that. The Twins prospects are their lifeblood. And that was something they couldn't do. I think, you look at it, Joey Loperfido, when he was in Minnesota last month, made some plays that turned around a game and won a game. And I mean, the pitcher, Bloss, sounded like he's on the way to being a number 4. And I just don't think the Twins wanted to tread in those waters to get a guy that they weren't quite sure would even crack that top 3.
All right. I have to ask Dan, because as a former Twin player, knowing some of the stories I've told about the Twins before, especially when I was there, in the Metrodome days, right? Why? Well, the Twins have money. Target Field is making them money. The Pohlads have more money than, you and me and everyone else combined will ever see in our lives. So why? What's the budget limit? I mean, we talked to you earlier this year at the beginning of the year, and you said, oh, they made the playoffs. They're going backwards. Why? Why do they have to? And don't use the TV deal. I know you're going to say the TV deal, but come on.
You just took my one out right there. Look, if they'd even spent $10 million, I really think this is rooted in November and December and January versus now. Because look, when you go into the trade deadline, especially in this kind of market, prices are going to be outrageous, right? And I don't see them being the team that wants to give up Walker Jenkins or Brooks Lee. Like the asks the starting points for Fedde and Flaherty were Walker Jenkins or Brooks Lee, who currently is the shortstop while Carlos Correa deals with plantar fasciitis on his right foot. And The other player was Emmanuel Rodriguez, and they think that all three of those guys could be playing big roles for this team in the next 2 years. So to give up those guys for a pitcher that you're not certain on, that's understandable. But I really do think this stems back to cutting payroll so drastically in the offseason. They reduced it from $27 million or by $27 million from last year. Some of that was going to be natural. They had a lot of free agents and they have a lot of young players. Look at, the homegrown talent on this roster. There's so many young and affordable players. And really, if they'd had 10 million more maybe to spend in the offseason, they could have addressed this then, and they wouldn't have had to been in this unenviable spot where they're competing against a bunch of buyers who were more motivated in other ways to go out and do this. And I think it definitely is frustrating to guys, but that's where I think, I went in expecting on Wednesday morning, I went into the clubhouse expecting a lot of people very upset. I got 2 people upset. I talked to 6 people. I got 2 who were upset and 4 who basically were indifferent because they had low expectations going in. I think that's just last year was more the surprising one for them because the Twins had more financial means at that point. And I do think, look, the TV deal, it was the worst TV deal in baseball last year going in. And they were free agents. And whereas, some of the other teams got to renegotiate off existing deals, the Twins had no leverage and had nobody locally willing to step up and give them a deal. So they were in a rough spot. That being said, if you spend 10 million more back then, you look at how they pieced it together. Look, going into the season, this rotation was going to be Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober. They were counting on Chris Paddock coming off of 2 Tommy Johns to fill a spot. Obviously, they knew they'd have to manage him, and they've done that. And even doing that, here he is with the right forearm strain, and he hopes to pitch again this season and is motivated to. But that's still up in the air. And beyond that, it was Anthony DeSclafani, who you knew the injury risk. Like, they made that Jorge Polanco trade with Seattle, and it was creative. They got, DeSclafani for $4 million. The Giants and Mariners are paying $8 of the $12 million just because of those injury risks. You got Justin Topa, who I think will debut this week as a reliever. And then they spent the other $5 million on Carlos Santana. And that equals out Jorge Polanco's $10 million. But those are the kinds of things they had to do because of the payroll reduction. And had they had 10 million more, I mean, do they sign Erick Fedde and get lucky the way the White Sox did? That would have been, they'd be in a much different spot right now. I think we'd be talking about them as the team that didn't need to do anything as opposed to the team that did.
All right. I mean, I get what all you're saying, but Erick Fedde got traded for not 2 top prospects. I don't understand.
No, I know, but no.
Erick Fedde got traded for, Tommy Edman, who went to LA, and for 2 of the lesser prospects.
Vargas was a 30, right? Vargas was the number 30 prospect last year.
Yeah, but he hasn't proven.
No, I agree.
I don't know that I buy this on that level. Plus, Fedde, you have for next year. I don't know.
Oh, I know. No, believe me, that's who I would have targeted too. There has been a lot of talk, and I still have a lot of White Sox friends, and there's been a lot of talk that the White Sox didn't want to deal in division. I have one friend at the White Sox. But I mean, that's the thing is like, what I heard from there was that this is where we started. The Twins didn't approach that level. They wanted one of those 3, Walker Jenkins, who's the number 6 prospect, Brooks Lee, who's number 13, and Emmanuel Rodriguez, where depending on where you look, he's 30 to 40 between multiple services. That was the starting piece. The Twins, that's a non-starter for them. They were not going to touch those guys. I think if they wanted to do something, it would have been surrounding Luke Keechel, who's looking like a really good player, but talks didn't advance at all. And they got the sense with both Detroit and Chicago that they just didn't want to trade in division. And that does make it difficult. Look, you don't want to see your rivals win. The funny part is that's ego, right? And you just want to get the best players. And if you're really after it, I understand the White Sox and the Tigers asking for those guys. They weren't going to get those guys, but there's more to be had in the Twin system, starting with the lower prospects who are still in that top 100.
Well, I just want to be clear here. The Tigers may be a different case. The White Sox aren't going to be good for a while. They were asking for the top 3 prospects or one of the top 3 prospects in the Twin system and wouldn't have gone down to like a Luke Keeschel, who is still a very high-end prospect.
That's what I was told, was that they
I'm more just having a hard time conceptualizing that they pivoted from that, right? When you saw what the price of starting pitching was, and then they went on to this 3-way deal with the Dodgers, and they're kind of putting all of their marbles in Miguel Vargas. Like, I would much rather have a Luke Keeschel and even keep going down the line on Zebby Matthews, Festa, CJ Culpepper. I mean, we can go down the line for a while, maybe even a Gabriel Gonzalez, who was in that deal in the offseason. And they didn't want to talk to the Twins just because they're in the division. Like, it's going to matter. Erick Fedde is a year and a half left. They should be getting the best deal possible.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think you get to that point and you say, these are the guys we want to go on. And the White Sox had enough interest around the league. I mean, Erick Fedde is, in my opinion, I know he was maybe not the highest end guy, but with that extra year, he's probably one of the 2 or 3 most consequential players traded. So if you have 10 other teams and your rival balks at your first ask, I can see why the teams didn't really connect. And, it didn't move anywhere. And I think they found the way to go. And it's unfortunate because I do think the Twins have a interesting system 1 through 6. And there's some depth guys that could easily match some of those depth guys the White Sox got from the Dodgers.
Yeah, that was my point, is that I think they got fleeced. There was interest, but I think they botched that one big time. Oh my gosh, let's follow the career of Luke Keeschel now and see how he does, and that he could have been with the White Sox. Kratz, we were with him in person. We watched him Futures game, the whole deal. Like, if they had a chance for someone like that versus the deal they ended up making, this is even worse than I thought it was. Because we looked at this. That's my point. Sorry, Dan. I'm having a hard time getting over this. We looked at this deal and we're like, there's no way that there weren't better offers for a year and a half of one of the better pitchers in baseball so far this year in Fedde, plus Kopech, who has high upside still as a reliever and a year and a half left, plus Tommy Pham. We see what he's doing already. I'm like, they got 3 players, the Cardinals, for that.
And the crazy part, I think, is that that's dealing from a depth point for the Twins. They have Royce Lewis, they have Carlos Correa, they have Brooks Lee. Eddie Julian's sitting at AAA right now, and we know how good he was last year. He's not the same player right now this year. He seems like he's trying to find his way back to that guy. But the Twins' infield is their depth spot. So Luke Keeschel would have been someone that easily could have been the starting point. And I think the Twins wouldn't have necessarily wanted to trade him because they know, we talked to their scouting director recently, Sean Johnson, and he said, based off his one meeting in person at the Combine, that when he walked out and he said he doesn't do this very often, he turned to his group and said, that guy's going to be a dude. He's going to be a guy. And they love what he's about. But also the Twins are a team that have shown a willingness to trade in the past. This is a team that in the last 3 years, you look at their offense right now and they're 6th in position player war or 7th in position player war. They're up there 7th in runs. They've had a ton of injuries and yet they're still doing this. And this is a team that has in the last couple of years traded Luis Arraez, Spencer Steer, and I know he hasn't done much because of injuries so far, but Christian Encarnacion Strand was a very highly touted prospect. They always seem to develop good hitters, and they've shown a willingness to trade them. And I think they had some willingness to do that in the cases of Kikuchi and Fedde, but it just wasn't there. And to an extent, Flaherty too. The one thing that would have been really interesting is had Flaherty gone to the Yankees, the Twins were certainly interested in acquiring Nestor Cortez from the Yankees, and that would have been a really interesting guy to see him switch because that would have certainly been a player that they would have loved to have added to the rotation.
Would they have been able to take on, I'm guessing, probably about $4 million of Kikuchi's money, or was that too steep of a price?
No, I've seen some speculation that they probably had $1 million because look, Alex Cobb only cost Cleveland $3 million, right? And Cleveland had some wiggle room. The prospect that they sent back was not, I don't even think it was a top 30 guy, but they were willing to take on the $3 million. Now there's a high risk there. I mean, we're talking about a guy that had hip surgery and has not pitched in the majors this year and had a blister kind of push back his showcase start the other day, and that would have certainly helped his market. But if you have $3 million, Alex Cobb, the upside there, definitely, if it pans out, that's an excellent pitcher to add to any team. And it didn't sound like San Francisco was willing to absorb money, and the Twins probably had, $1 million is what I've heard per player to absorb. So they were looking to do it with a prospect, and I don't think they wanted to pay that much of a prospect given all the risk there with Cobb. So, you put yourself in a tough spot. And again, this is something that had they had 10 million more bucks and payroll been cut by 17 to 20 million instead, maybe they never even have to address this in the first place.
Wait, okay, so one more to backtrack on here. They like Kikuchi.
Yeah.
Astros gave up a nice return. Kikuchi has, say, we're guessing, $4-ish million left for the rest of the season. How were the Twins going to acquire them if they were interested in him? Would they have? So was the ask revolving around? This is not uncommon. The Yankees did this with the Joey Gallo deal, where they like, hey, we'll take on $1 million, you eat the rest, we'll give you a better prospect.
Right.
They put in a
That's how the
position
Twins
like
would
that.
have done it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Twins felt like they were well on the way to meeting Toronto's needs, and maybe it would have included Richards as well. But then Houston came in with what they were offering, and that far went over what the Twins thought they were going to be giving up.
Yeah, and of course the Astros, I think, took on the rest of the money for Kikuchi too, which it's a tough ask when you're going back to a team on the other side and you're like, hey, this guy's good, he's getting a lot of looks. Can you also eat the contract even though he's worth it?
Right. No, it's crazy what they were able to accomplish. Toronto, for not moving a ton of their, we heard them all the talk about would they move Vlad and Bichette and some of those guys over the year. And then what they did was still very impressive, I thought, for moving guys on the fringe. They did well. Okay.
So a bigger picture question, because this is my last question, and I started kind of this way. If not now, when? When you save up and you build something special, which I think they have, you have to kind of add those last pieces, whether it's in the offseason or around the trade deadline. It hasn't happened the past 2 trade deadlines. Did they not think they're good enough to win a World Series, or do they think they're good enough to win a World Series and they didn't need to do much and they're stuck, so you just kind of roll with what you have? Like, I'm curious about where they think the team is at.
It's tricky because I think that this is a team. Look at what happened last year in the World Series. It was Texas and Arizona, and who would have thought those teams with those bullpens, and Arizona's bullpen came alive at the right time, right? And Bruce Bochy is a just genius when it comes to managing bullpens in the postseason. And he had less than he ever had to work with in San Francisco, and somehow with 3 guys made it happen. The Twins really believe in this position lineup. It is a very talented group. I mean, you look at what Matt Wallner, he started the season 1 for 25, and now he's got like a 940 OPS. Since he's come back, he learned how to hit off speed and is hitting with power, and has that big arm that threw out Trey Turner trying to stretch a single into a double last week in Minnesota. That's probably their 7th or 8th best position player, and he gets platooned, and they have options on the right-handed side. Their 1 through 13 on the position side is very talented. I think they were number 1 in position player WAR from June 15th until maybe a week and a half ago in the majors. It's a really good group, and Royce Lewis wasn't really even involved in that. He played those first couple weeks and hit 10 home runs, and then got hurt and just came back. It's a scary good group, and Carlos Correa is performing like an all-star before his injury. I do think the time is now for them. They can hit with anybody, and we've seen that work in recent postseasons, that if you can just outslug and get enough pitching, and they're really banking at this point on that pitching being Pablo Lopez, who is on a good run. His last 7 starts, he has a 2.86 ERA. It's lowered his season ERA by a point, but that's still at 4.65. In those 7 starts, he's given up 4 homers. The first 80 innings, he gave up 16. So they see a lot of really good improvement there. Joe Ryan's been consistent, and Bailey Ober's been amazing, going back now over a month and a half, and like a 1.87 ERA. But the crazy part is last year when it came to October, Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan were their latter options for the rotation. They were Sonny Gray and Pablo Lopez, and In the elimination game against Houston, Joe Ryan got pulled after 2 innings because his fastball velocity wasn't there. And his fastball velocity has been way better this year. He is physically in great shape, and he was already in great shape. I think he really prepared for this moment. We're going to see if it holds up over these last 2 months and what the fastball looks like in October. And that's the risk they're willing to take at this point, because I think they like that top 3 a lot. They're going to need some serious contributions from Simeon Woods. Richardson has been great, but right now, until Chris Paddock gets back, David Festa has had some really good innings. The second time through, teams have started to see him well. Zebby Matthews is an intriguing prospect at AAA, but he's going to apparently play a role down the stretch. And the one part that really stinks, I think, for the Twins as far as their current group is, had they gotten a starter, they could have moved Louis Varland instantly back to the bullpen, where he throws 100 and throws a 91 cutter. And we saw that last year, how much that plays up versus him as a starter. He's been sort of middling at AAA as a starter. He's been really good at times, and he's been really bad at times. And if there's a lot of people there that think his future is in the bullpen. Adding him to Yohan Duran, Griffin Jacks, Jorge Alcala, depending on what kind of version of Brock Stewart they're able to get. And he just got hurt in New York again and is back on the IL. But that could be a 5-deep bullpen with guys that throw 100. And that's a nasty group to have if you're able to switch Louis Varland. They will eventually switch Louis Varland unless a lot of things go awry the rest of the season. And Louis Varland will be in the bullpen for the postseason as long as there's good health the rest of the way. But, that would be a much better arm to have for August and September.
Dan, real quick, 2 things. One, first of all, how awesome would I be to cover as a manager? Awesome. You don't even have to answer. I'll answer that for you. And then 2, are the Twins going to let the White Sox end their losing streak this weekend and let them win a game?
Man, they cannot do that. I mean, their shot's what? It's crochet, right? That's their shot, right?
Saturday, but you might only throw 2 innings. You might only throw 2 innings. You don't even know.
I know. No, look, the White Sox, there's not even – they traded everybody away. There's not even 2 Sox anymore. It's just one dirty White Sox, like, by itself at this point. I liked what they were able to accomplish out of the Fedde signing, but man, they're running on nothing at this point. That's troubling.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dan. This was enlightening on many fronts. Really needed this.
You got Scott so fired up.
Oh my gosh, we don't even have time for all of my reactions, but it was very, very informative. I know Twins fans needed explanations on what the heck happened. You nailed it. Dan, thank you so much. Everyone, obviously, follow Dan. We'll post some of these clips and check out his articles, too, in The Athletic. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.